Support the He podcast via a one-time donation, a monthly subscription from as low as $1, a lifetime membership, and purchase He's exclusive collection of merchandise. And for all other business inquiries at buymeacoffee.com/Rafi. Who is he? He is me. Hi, I'm Rafi Redzwan. This is he. Here is my chance to share some amazing stories with some amazing people that are inspiring to me. He celebrates everyday people of everyday life. He revolves around conversations that inspire others to change the world and make a difference in life, with a little bit of laughter and a whole lot of drama. Join me for personal stories and experiences on health and healing, successes and failures, recovery and discovery, anything relatable, and anything in between. He elevates us to rise again and live our very best life. Just so you know, you are not alone. He is with you. Back in the studio.
Back in the studio.
Hi, Shayna.
Hi, Reefy. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm so good.
Yes, I just woke up. We're on LA time.
Yeah, we got some time difference here. Yes, we're in LA. What time
Yes.
is it over there?
Now it's almost 8, and it's a wonderful morning to start and have a conversation with you, Shay.
Aw, well, I'm very happy to be here for you.
I'm so happy that you said yes to me. And then I think this conversation, music is not just notes. You've been doing music for years, and I know it's the pauses, the rest, and the breath in between. In this episode, I hope we explore what happens in those spaces between songs
Mm,
and between those spaces. And I love your music so much, and I feel like it has so much depth to it.
mm,
And I love that you choose this topic because when I listen to your music, I don't just hear the rhythm, but I also listen to the notes and the lyrics you wrote. It comes with depth and also meaning. And I love to find out between these songs and between seasons when you are creating and at home, between who you were and who you are becoming. I hope you
mm,
reflect on how silence can be just as powerful as sound, and how the spaces you've held for yourself have shaped your artistry, your growth, and your life. Shayna, what does the rhythm between the notes mean to you at this point of your life? How have you come to appreciate the spaces in between?
Wow, that's very beautifully said, Reefy. Gosh, I really, first of all, I appreciate you saying all these lovely things about the music and the depth. And I don't know how else to say this without sounding a little bit off kilter, but it's the space where I'm able to listen to any kind of downloads or thoughts, or like whenever I find myself meditating in the morning or praying. I find that the silence is where a lot comes to me. That's a very loaded question. Maybe we can break it down a little bit, but I do feel like a lot of the times, just like a plant, when we're watering it, we think, oh, it needs water to survive. But
Mm,
the plant also needs aeration to survive. We can overwater a plant and drown a plant when we give too much of ourselves or we receive too much. But I think finding that beautiful balance between nurturing your craft and watering it in your garden, for lack of a
yeah.
better term, the aeration and the air and the space is also just as important in nurturing that creative bloom or force. So
Yeah.
I do find myself spending a lot of time in reflection. I travel alone sometimes. I
Mhm.
tend to need to recharge after a very charged week being at the studio. So, yeah, I do find it to be a very beautiful space where we can actually truly expand before we then share with the world.
Mm-mm. How long have you been doing music?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I started writing songs when I was 13. I remember
Mm.
my sister started taking guitar lessons, and I was like, I want to take guitar lessons too. So I
Yes.
did, and I ended up writing my own songs. I just felt like what I was hearing on the radio was starting to get repetitive, and I just had so many feelings going through all that I did, being, a mixed race kid, and
Mhm.
acclimating in a school where you're kind of a nerd. And I was like a super nerd, right? Wearing glasses. I was a bookworm. Like I just got teased a lot. And so finding that space, right? During that time was making music for me,
Mhm.
and expressing how I felt. So I started writing songs when I was 13 and I'm still doing it. So you do the math.
Yes, yes.
I never
Wow, wow.
stopped. Yeah.
Well, so you've been writing since you were 13, and
Yeah.
when was your
Yes.
first song? When did you first release your song?
Okay,
How old were
so
you
this
then?
has
Yeah,
got some layers to it. I'm
yeah.
gonna tell you a little story if you're open to it.
Yes,
So
yes.
when I was 13, I started writing songs, and then at 14, my mom actually started enrolling me in these competitions, like talent competitions,
Hmm.
and I was then invited to perform on Asia Bagus or to compete on Asia Bagus.
Yes.
You remember that show?
Yes, I
So it was like
remember.
regional. There was like Indonesia,
Yes.
Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines. Like they're all competing, right? The regions. And so, or that regional area. And so on that show, they asked what I was going to do for my talent. And I decided to sing my own original song. I ended up winning first runner up. I
Mm,
lost to this guy who was like impersonating Michael Jackson.
mm,
I mean, how could I hold a candle to that, you know? He was
mm.
so powerful and his presence was amazing. But I won first runner up and managed to get some attention from labels because it was, broadcasted regionally. And so that's when it all started, the real music business journey. But then, right in the middle of all that, I ended up landing a TV show as a host, right? Me and my sister
Yeah.
had that speak up show. So I was
Yes.
kind of off railed for a couple of years because of the TV stuff that we were doing and, it being a full time job at such a young age. I was, I think, 15. And
Mhm.
so I started releasing music much later, like when I was in college. And it was just for fun. It wasn't like I'm trying to be an artist on stage. It was just, I made this thing and I want to put it out. I was sort of nudged and pushed in the direction of ending up on stage again because I actually went to school to be a songwriter for
Mm,
songwriting. And
mm.
so my first song, I would say to circle back and answer your question, the first release I ever did was
Mhm.
an album called Beyond Borders, and it was
Yes,
coming
I.
out of my college project. My partner at the time, Jay Diesel, was the producer. And then I just wrote this album that had like gamelan in it, whatever. And then that being our first release, I wasn't expecting anything to happen from it, but it ended up getting licensed all over this TV show called The Young and the Restless. And that's when I
Yes.
discovered licensing, which is what I do till this day. So
Yes.
if that
Wow.
answers your question, I hope it does.
Yes, it does. It does. And I've listened to your music all my life. We are about the same age. And I think, you write beautiful music, Shayna.
Thank
I
you.
can feel the sound of music. It's so beautiful and the way you write. And, this conversation doesn't come out of nowhere. It
Yeah.
brought by fate. I've known
Hmm.
you for years. I think, but the last time I met you was a long time ago until I went to a spiral. We were supposed to work on something, but it didn't happen. But I'm glad that this conversation today made it happen.
Aw, me too. I'm so glad.
And I'm so happy because music gives so much life to me. And to be
Mm,
talking to a musician like you who writes for a living,
yeah.
you don't know how much you give to people.
That's so sweet. You're gonna put me
And
in tears here. We just started this interview.
you know why? And because
That's so
and
sweet.
because I think when you're creating, you are in a space, in your own space. And I think I'm really curious if you can describe me a moment when silence brought you clarity or unexpected growth. How did that time away shape you creatively or personally?
When you say time away, do you mean that like on a microscopic level, like daily, or do
Yeah.
you mean like when I'm on off traveling for 2, 3 months?
I think someone
Okay.
like daily, maybe when you go before bed, when you go off on holiday, that time, the pause
Okay.
you take.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you in. I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you in on my sort of rituals that I have.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
try to do them daily. But as soon as I wake up, I don't look at my phone. I go
Hmm.
downstairs. I live in a house and I have a little backyard that has a little patio area. So I go downstairs. Every morning, I make my hot lemon water ginger with honey and a pinch of Celtic salt. Every morning, I
Yes.
have this tea that I sip on outside in my backyard in complete silence. I don't look at anything. My phone's upstairs still charging.
Hmm.
I literally allow myself the time to just sit there, sip on my tea, and just see what comes to me. And so this is the part that I'm going to kind of let you in on.
Yeah.
I've never really explained this to anyone publicly, in a space like this, because I get
Yes.
asked sometimes why, I kind of check out certain moments and need time alone to recharge. recharge, it's
Mhm.
not always for me. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is that in the silence, right, when I'm meditating and praying, is when I hear things. And I don't want to sound like a woo woo, it's nothing strange. It's just, I call them downloads. And so when I'm in this space for about 45 minutes to an hour every morning, I allow these thoughts, like anything. It could be like, oh, don't forget to email this person. Oh, don't. And then sometimes I'll get a melody, and then sometimes I'll get a concept. Sometimes I'll get a beautiful poem, and I'm like, where's this coming from? I don't know. But in
Mm.
those moments is when I discovered the true meaning of what I do. And I think
Mhm.
as a kid, you go in dreaming of becoming something. And then as we get older, we start discovering why we became what we become.
Yeah.
And what I learned in this silence that I've created for the past 3, 4 years, I've been doing this. In that time is when the most juiciest thoughts and emotions and feelings sort of start to, I don't know if it's surfacing or if it's reaching my antenna, but essentially I see myself as sort of like an antenna where when you create the silence, you sort of push out the noise, you're able to receive. That's why they call them receivers, right? And so I get sometimes a melody, like I said, a concept, or I'll get a poem, or I'll get, little things I need to do, or I have to go get a bath mat, because I forgot the bamboo one. So there's all these things that come through, and I try to keep a notepad next to me to write these things down. So,
Mm.
however I end up capturing it, it doesn't really
Mhm.
matter. It's more about making sure that I do catch it and put it down somewhere. Sometimes it's in my notes. Sometimes it's meaning like my book that I have next to me.
Mhm.
Sometimes I have to run inside and get like a recording device, or I have to go upstairs and grab my phone and record a voice note. Sometimes it's literally like, for example, I'll get a track and they're like, you need to write to this. And I'm like, okay, I'm not looking at anything, but I'm listening to the media in order for me to write to it, right? In those moments, I do what I call like a dump. It's a doc dump or like a vocal dump where I just go in and I literally just like flow into the ether. And then sometimes I have people, if I'm in a studio session, they'll be like, where did that come from? And I honestly can't say where it comes from. But to me, it's
Yeah.
from source, it's from God, it's from, I don't know, whatever you believe. I can't say where it comes from, but I've learned over the years that in this silence is when I become a stronger receiver and a stronger
Mm.
channeler. I hope that
Mm-mm.
helps answer that question. So
Yeah.
that's where a lot of my moments have come, has been when I'm alone, when I'm in silence. And then what I do is once I have all this like juiciness, I then take that to work. So I have this whole
Mm-mm.
document of stuff.
Mm-mm.
I have audio waves of stuff, and they'll be like, what should we write today? And I'm like, I got this concept, that concept. And so I just start spitballing and they're like, where does this come from? And I'm like, in the
Mm-mm.
quiet spaces. So it's not like I'm sitting there conjuring anything up. It
Mm-mm.
feels more like I'm sitting there waiting for things to arrive. And then I have to do my duty, which is the service aspect of it, which is I'm serving myself in this moment of making sure I capture everything in order for me to deliver it. As much as many creatives see themselves as creators, right? As much as I
Yeah.
see myself as a creative, I
Mhm.
still can't take 100% credit for what comes through me, if that answers your
Yeah.
question. So without
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
all woo-woo on you,
Yeah.
the reason why I have my rituals and my spaces that I make and create for this time is to be able to sharpen my antenna and my receiving abilities,
Mhm.
if that even makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I hear a lot of peace going on too with this ritual and the process that you go through every day.
Yeah.
This is part of, I think, part of our self-discovery journey that I think is not always big, you know? It's
Yeah.
always the sitting alone in the room, not
Yes.
conjuring up to anything, like you said. And also, Shayna, you may realize this or you may not. You also have a voice. You don't just have a
Mm.
voice of speaking up through the show that you had in the past, but also through your
Mm.
music. Now, I'm also curious, before I ask you the next question, is that when did you discover that you have the
Oh
voice
my
that we
gosh.
hear today? Yeah,
Gosh,
you
I
know?
honestly don't know if I can answer you. I can personally answer you because my mother has been the one to answer that. And it was
Huh.
when someone had asked in
Yeah.
front of me and her. And then when she answered, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So I'm going to tell you what she told me. Okay, so this was years ago. I was 9 years old. And we were in this play with Joe Hasham and Freed American.
Yeah.
And as kids, my mom used to enroll us into like theater classes and whatnot. So we actually did our first play production, live production.
Mm.
ever in our lifetimes. I say we, my sisters and I. So we were the only kids in the play, in the
Mm.
production. And
Yeah.
so at the wrap party, when everything was all done, I guess someone had said, like, sing, sing a song. And I ended up getting up on stage and singing Greatest Love of All on karaoke. And that's the moment when Joe Hasham went to my mom and said, I didn't know she had that. And my mom's like, what? Her voice. And then that's when he said, you need to do something with that. And that's what planted the seed in my mom's head and her brain to make sure to nurture that aspect of me. So that's why the music classes started, the guitar classes started, but she never really like pressed it on me. She just enrolled me in competitions. And that's when,
Mm.
quote unquote, that sort of voice started developing. But I
Mm.
never really thought I want to be a singer. Like that wasn't in my thought process at all as a kid. I just loved writing
Mm.
and reading and creating, and the voice just kind of came out when that was being called out. And so my mom was the one that actually nurtured it, not me. I just kept
Mm.
showing up.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And I love the fact that you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I did, but I will say this.
Mm.
Whenever there was like a publication that like printed that I had won the competition, I would have this giant award and my face would look miserable. And it's funny, I look back at those little articles and I'm like, why did I look so miserable? And I think it's because I loved singing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think at a certain point there was something in me still at that very young age. I didn't want to be a spectacle. So,
Yeah.
and this is the introverted side of me, right? Why I love working behind the scenes. And I think
Mm-mm.
because my mom was so driven to put me on stage and
Mm.
I was kind of adverse to it, I found myself moping after the singing was done. So once the
Mm-mm.
singing and the all that stuff that I loved was done, that's when
Mm-hmm.
I turned into like my real my, my I can't keep up this facade. I can't keep up a smiling face because this is not what I want. I just wanted to
Yeah.
sing. I didn't want to stand up here in front of all these people. And at
Yes.
that moment
Yes.
in time, I felt a lot of embarrassment because I was, I had big
Mm-mm.
glasses
Mm-mm.
and I was just kind of super nerdy. So I didn't like being seen, but I liked being heard, or I liked
Mm.
expressing through that medium.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I feel you. I feel you. I've been doing the podcast for 5 years. I haven't
Mm.
been that public, but ever since I started going public, it has its way to it.
For
Mm.
some people, it's
Mm.
beautiful.
I
It
know.
it
I cannot.
heals them.
I know. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
think
can't.
that has something to do with, I think, how we recharge as human beings. Some people,
Mm-mm.
when they're done with work, they go to happy hour and they need to be around people to
Mm-mm.
feel
Mm-mm.
charged up again. But some people, they have to go home and isolate to recharge. So I function very well at parties and
Mhm.
events, and I can meet people,
Mm.
and I'm very friendly and open and
Mm.
all this goodness. But
Mm.
then I need to take a break from it, which is
Yeah.
what led me to realizing that that's not the life path that
Mm.
I would be happiest in. Because some
Yeah.
people are so good at it. Like some
Yeah.
people actually thrive off of audiences and off of being exposed to the public. And I actually think it's very beautiful. And part of me wishes I enjoyed that part. Part of me wishes, oh,
Mm.
couldn't God have made me a lot more extroverted because I would have been doing so well, blah, blah, blah. But then I
Mm.
realized that just wasn't the path or the gift that he gave me. I think
Mm.
ultimately I had to really get honest with myself. And that's what led to another small short story where I was doing really well in New York and I had a band. We were touring. We were about to get
Yeah.
signed to a very big
Yeah.
label. And that's when I reflected. I was like, guys, this is not what I want. I don't want to be on the road living out of my suitcase. I don't want to be out, binded to contracts, 4 days a week, at these crazy hours at night. I'm a nester. I love to create my sanctuary. So I started
Mm.
realizing very early
Mm.
in my 20s that I didn't want that life of being on the road and on stage. So it's funny and it's ironic that I ended up starting my life in this, entertainment career being a spectacle,
Mm.
being on TV, So it's funny that as I
Yeah.
got older, I valued my privacy so much more because it's a job.
Yeah.
Being
And I
public
remember
is
watching
is
you.
is a job. Hmm.
It is a job. And I remember watching you on ABC, New Year's
ABC?
Eve, Times Square, in
Oh
Times
yeah,
Square.
the New Year's Eve
I remember.
broadcast. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
yes.
Yeah, that was
Drop the
New
ball.
York.
Yeah.
That was
It was
so
New
fun.
York. And
So
I remember you
fun.
being out. Yes, yes. And I remember I remember exactly. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, that's my girl, Shayna.
And that was probably when you were living in New York, right?
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, it was
And
so fun too because they got us
mm,
like a trailer
mm,
and they catered
mm,
champagne and all these wonderful
mm,
things,
mm,
well, to the band, not to me
yeah.
specifically, but we just got spoiled. And it was the first time I ever experienced the ball drop in Times Times Square. So to be able to experience it that way was just like
Yeah.
godsend. I was
Wow.
so
Yeah,
grateful.
yeah. So you've lived sort of both lives. You know the drill of what's going
Yeah.
on behind
Oh,
the scene, on stage. And I
yes.
think, this is where we come on to the internal rhythm of Shayna Zaid. And how do you decide when to pause and when to move forward? What does your internal rhythm sound like when life gets loud?
Ooh, it's intuitive, very
Yeah,
intuitive. So I
yeah.
think over the years, my intuition has just gotten sharper and sharper.
Mhm.
I think trusting that gut feeling and like knowing when to be quiet or when to take a pause or when to regenerate or recharge. I tend to move through my life very intuitively. And this has to do with like what I give myself to in terms of sessions or people I work with or projects I take on. I tend to feel into it first before I make a decision. So
Mhm.
I think I don't know how to answer that question really, but
Yeah.
I think yeah, intuitively, I would say is my answer.
Mhm.
It's not really like a, oh, I got to do this right now. It's more like, oof, I'm overworked right now. I've been in the studio
Mhm.
for 12 hours. I need to take the day off tomorrow, maybe half a day, and then I'll reschedule my session for later. So I move this way. And, obviously with important commitments that can't be moved, like you and I, for example, like with the interview, I honor these spaces, right? But I would
Yeah.
definitely sort of touch in on moving very intuitively through the moments when I feel like I need to take a step back or take a pause, for sure.
Yes. Wow. And you listen to your guts
You know,
always?
since I can remember, Rifi, and it's wild, when I was 16, my mom handed me a book. It's called The
Mhm.
Celestine Prophecies by James Redfield. I will never
Mhm.
forget that book because I resisted reading that book.
Yeah.
Resisted it because I was 16 and I knew what I wanted and I want to read my books. I don't want to listen to anybody. I was such a rebel. And
Mm.
then years later, when I went on my sabbatical when I was 28, that's the first book that landed in my hands and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, okay, I got to read this. I wish I'd read it when I was 16 because the book essentially is all about. Have you ever read The Alchemist by Paulo
No,
Coelho?
no, I haven't.
Oh, such a
I've heard
beautiful
of
book.
it.
After we finish this interview, I almost want to gift it to you. Tell me where to send it. I
Yes.
want to.
Okay.
This book is so beautiful because I would tell my mom that I would get these dreams, or I would hear things, or I would think of someone, they would call me, or like I would say something's not right with that person. I feel it, and then literally a
Mm.
day later, it wouldn't be right. And my mom's like, "How do you have this strange ability to pick up
Mm.
on things?" And I never understood it, right? So she just kind of kept quiet about it. She was just let me tell her all these things. There was just a lot of synchronicities in my life, a lot of
Yes.
serendipitous moments, a lot of synchronicities. And so I would tell my mom, but I wouldn't tell anybody else. And so because she started noticing this in me, and this pattern is why she felt compelled to share that book with me when I was older. I wish I'd read it when I was 16, not when I was 28. But when I finally read it, I started to understand that maybe some of us
Mm.
we are all born with this gift. We can all tap into our intuition. We all have our primitive instincts, right? But there are some of us that
Mm.
I feel tend to value the quiet and the silence, which is when we get the most downloads or messages, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
so, a lot of what I'm sharing with you is to sort of help you kind of see into the idea of making space and limiting stimulation because that's the world we live in. Because imagine we were in our cave days, right? There's way more telepathy happening. There's intuitive, like you'd feel when there are lions close, but you can't see it. You
Mm-mm.
know what I mean? There's something
Yes.
very deeply intuitive and primitive in us as human beings, all of us, that we're all blessed with. But because of the overstimulation in TV and radio and media and everything, social media, all these things, because we're so hyper, and I don't even say overstimulated, I use the word hyperstimulated. We have
Yeah.
now, as a society, and I say the royal we when I
Mhm.
speak we, as being overstimulated and anxious. And there's just so much that we're being thrown into and thrown at, right? That we
Yeah.
don't take enough time to spend in solitude. And I think because of that sort of innate knowing as a kid, I always felt that, because I
Mhm.
read books a lot. So I always inadvertently and somehow subconsciously always searched for silence. And I didn't know I was doing it, right? My mom only noticed it. So I
Mhm.
would say that It started a long time ago. I don't really know when, but I've always just moved through my intuition, even with what I do in life. You know,
Mm,
it's
mm.
just been an ongoing process of learning how to deepen and to know when something is an intrusive thought and when something is actually a real download. And I think this is why the power of prayer is so important. And
Mm.
whether or not someone is religious, it's not really about like the structure necessarily, but it's about the mechanism of praying and making space to like speak your truth and ask for things or whatever. I tend to lean more towards gratitude over asking, but
Yeah,
goal setting is another thing, right?
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's always been like that. I hope I didn't go too much on a tangent. I tend to be a bit of a tangent girl, a yapper.
I love it.
When
Yeah,
I met
yeah.
after a lot of silence. So yeah, so I think a lot of it started happening from a very young age. My mom told me about this, and I only learned about it when I was 28. Can you believe it?
You know, you speak so much of what I experience now. I never thought of it that way. And the
Mm,
dreams I've had, the connection I felt, like you know when something is off, you know? And I really feel that when I worked on this podcast 5 years ago, there were moments like that where I felt like there is this connection, and every single person that said yes and ghosted and said no or even ignore me, for example, they were meant to mean something in this journey. And
redirect,
yeah,
redirect.
redirect. And then every
Yes,
single person who did not
absolutely.
make it brought me to something or someone, that's meant to be.
Yes,
You
yes,
know,
exactly.
you know.
So there's this saying, what is it?
Mm.
Rejection is redirection or
Yes,
protection.
yes,
It's
yes.
funny because when I first heard that, I was like, yes, it is. And it's
Yeah,
almost like,
yeah.
say, for example, when something bad happens, right? I'm like, okay, what's the lesson
Mm,
here? You know, because I try to like, as much as I am an emotional person, I do have a lot of my dad, which is also very logical.
mm-hmm,
So I try to like ask, okay, what's the lesson in this? And so it's so funny that in retrospect, it always looks better. It's like, oh, if that hadn't have happened, this wouldn't have happened. So it's almost like anytime things happen that are unfortunate, I tend to see, let's see what this reveals versus, oh no, I'm unlucky, or oh no, this is bad, this is
yeah.
bad for me. It's more like, ooh, I wonder what this is going to reveal. Just like you said.
Yes, yes. Because towards the end of the season, Sheena, I mean, I've decided to not do season five. I did plan to reserve season five for the US edition and leave some of my US friends and network for exclusively for that season. But that
Hmm.
didn't happen. And then you came in.
Aw.
I wanted to have Sarah too, to
You
begin with.
can. I mean,
And
you
then,
guys can talk about beauty,
yeah,
you know. She is
yes.
she's a wealth of fountain of knowledge, that woman.
And
Definitely.
it led me to something. And then you spoke for me because I've never quite to put that right in that space.
Mm.
In other words, you just explained it.
Oh, okay, okay,
Uh,
gotcha. I
well, you
iterated
explain.
it
Yeah,
relatively well.
yes.
I got you, I got you.
That explains a lot why it's happening to me.
Oh,
Because it's been very emotional. Towards the end of this season, it's been very emotional because
I bet.
it's very personal to me. And then it's not just talking about current issues. We're going into the deep of emotion, of personal life, and sometimes, and I respect those spaces. People honor that spaces to me, and I must respect that. And I shouldn't use that for sensationalism or virality and stuff like that. And I know that right from the beginning when I decided to do this. And when you told me and how you told me, I think that's just give me another whole feeling about wow, what
Yeah, because
this is
sometimes pauses are much bigger
makes
than
so
we,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And then going to the next phase of my life, it's a big pause for me. I think this pause usually come from, is it necessary? Will I survive sitting down, not seeing any more likes or views and stuff like that? Would I be able to make it without that? But there you go.
I truly believe it doesn't matter though, Rifi, because as
Mm,
long as you're creating from a place where you feel like you're serving something that you're meant
mm,
to serve, what
mm.
matters is that you did your part.
Yeah,
I think
I
a
think
lot
so
of
too.
us, because of social media and all this stuff, right? There's just so much noise these days. I think our general society or the culture in society is now so fixated on numbers and likes and metrics and all these things when
Yes.
really the wealth of what's really really happening is what's ultimately really being transmuted through each creator or through each channeler or whoever that is signed up to put something out there into the world. And I
Mhm.
think it's a very brave, and this is to you, Rifi, like it is a very brave and courageous thing to do to put yourself out there. And
Mm,
a lot of people can sit there and criticize or comment, but are they in the arena? Are
mhm,
they the ones down there with the lions in the den fighting them off? Like, no. So it's
mm,
easy to sit up there in the nosebleeders and comment. And, when people start to criticize what creatives are doing, I think throw those people in the den, throw those people in the ring. Let's see how they show up. They can't.
mhm,
Most of the
mhm,
time, they can't. So when we give too much value in people that devalue that, then what does that actually do? Where's the math, right? And so I
mm,
feel like the fact that you've spent this journey of your self discovery as you're going in, there's a part of you that is also expanding equally outward. The more you deepen with yourself, the more you're going to expand equally outward, right? And this is all in the unseen
mm,
energetically, right? And
yeah,
so, again, this is not me talking from a scientific perspective, it's just what I intuitively feel.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there is a lot of science that backs this up. And
yeah.
so, there's all quantum mechanics and all that. But I feel like, just like we were talking about the watered plant earlier, when we overwater a plant, it drowns. And I feel like maybe
Mhm,
this is a time for you to, like, even though you're saying this is your finale of the season, yes, for now.
mhm,
Because I feel like in that space, again, in that silence, is when you might get another download of, like, oh, what if that's why I tend to give this sort of nugget of what I've learned off to the people that I surround myself with whenever they get stuck, is
mhm,
find and make that silence, because that silence is when your best channeling and gifts are going to arrive, because you're
mhm,
making space. We're in
mhm,
a hyper fixated, overstimulated world now.
mhm.
Imagine how valuable space is in all that mess, right?
Yeah,
So when we
yeah.
give that space power, it empowers us. So maybe right now you're in this in between moment, but actually your plant is just aerating, your garden is just aerating, it's getting
Yeah,
some
yeah.
sun.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Shayna, for saying that. And, I think you spoke truthfully in every word. What's currently unfolding in your life
Ooh,
and the
I love
music,
this.
and your
Yes.
music,
So,
yeah, that feels
okay, just
significant
to
right
kind of
now.
to give you a bit of a backdrop of what I do,
Yeah,
because I don't think we got into it very much, but essentially I'm a
yeah,
songwriter and I
yeah.
work in the music licensing and synchronization space, which is essentially music that we make for moving pictures. So think ads, promos, TV, trailers, film, anything that has moving pictures that requires music and sound in the back is where my abilities are being utilized, so to speak. So that's a lot of what I do. However, and as many projects that I have, these things called monikers,
Mhm,
and they're all these individual projects that have its own identity. They have its own sound, has its own narrative, has its own, like, even like how I sing the project. So I have all these
mhm,
little, like, monikers that I have that exist in behind the scenes, right? When they pitch the music. So I have like a rock one. I have like one that's very MGMT. I have one that's very folky, and then I have another one that's very rappy, Remy Wolfy. So
yeah.
it just depends on the project, right? But what I'm excited to talk about right now in this present moment is a new project that I put together that just got signed,
Mhm,
called Sweet Tangerines. And the idea behind this project is essentially an accumulation of what we've been talking about today.
yeah.
Which
Uh-huh.
is why I felt like it would be good to highlight it. And so, to give you a bit of backdrop of what it is, it's a project that is my biggest passion project that I've had my whole life. And I actually mean that. And
Mhm,
I think it's because I've learned so much about myself. I really know who I am. I know what I want to say. I know what I receive and what I want to deliver. And this is the first time I created a project before the business people got involved, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And when I brought it to them, they were like, oh my God, we want to sign this right away. And I kept it away from the business people because I wanted to make sure the project was remaining in this intuitive space that I wanted to provide for it, right?
Mhm,
And the name came up because one day I was sipping this tea and there was this little packet that said something I can't remember. And I remember thinking, wow, I love sunrises and sunsets. I just love them. There's this moment where the sky just bursts with this magical orange color, this tangerine
mhm,
color. And then the sky
mhm,
starts changing into that rainbow, because the sun is down. Right as soon as the sun set, right before the sun rises, there's this beautiful color. And, tangerines are very healthy. They're full of vitamin C. And, you would think literal sweet tangerines, but the project was named after finding that moment where you're so deeply present in your surroundings. And at that sunrise and sunset, it's so symbolic, right? When it goes into the darkness, when it comes out of the darkness, there's so much about life we can learn in nature, even seasons, right? And so I wanted to capture that feeling in the name of this project. And I felt like when that came out, it was so immediate. I was like, sweet tangerines. Even the A&Rs love, so it's one of those
Yeah.
things where it just came so, again, through the downloads, right? And it
Yeah.
reached a point in my career where I felt like I've been such an open vessel. It's a balance too, right? Because I still have to cater to briefs and I have to cater to certain projects or to certain films and trailers. Like it's very specific what I do. And I wanted to
Mhm.
make sure that I was still honoring that space side of what I do. And in that space, I was able to create Sweet Tangerine. So that's what's going to be what we're working on this in this next season. We're now in the midst of writing an album.
Wow. When are we expecting the release?
As with all the music that I make with these companies that
Ah,
I am signed to, we only release it just to make sure it's available to the world, but we're not going to be promoting it.
yeah.
Just so
Okay.
you're aware, we're not going to be
Okay.
promoting it. We're looking to finish the album. I'm thinking probably by fall this year, and then we'll probably be finished up. All the visuals, whatnot. I would say top of next year, like springtime, because I feel like that's going to be a good time to put something like Sweet Tangerines out because things are blossoming, right? So
Mhm.
album is going to be end of this year, and then I would expect it to probably come out springtime, yeah, next year.
Wow.
And it's funny because I'm
Wow.
like, as I'm answering you, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like the timeline. I
I'm
haven't
so
thought about it
excited.
yet because I'm still so much inside the creating process.
Uh-huh.
But that answer to me gives you a bit of a general kind of idea of the
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah. And work like this usually take time,
Yes.
As
Yeah.
much as we want to push it, I mean, if you push it, I mean, it still come out, but it takes time. And the silence, the
Yes.
spaces in between,
Yes.
I'm
And
looking
also
forward to
environments.
environment.
Like
Yes.
making sure
Mm.
that I change up my environments.
Yes.
At the beginning of every year, I usually go on like a month long, maybe sometimes six
Mm.
weeks,
Mm,
sometimes
mm,
8 weeks, of where I just travel. Last I think this past year I did Tulum for 3 weeks, and then I was
mm,
somewhere else. I was in Brazil. The year prior to that, I think if I'm not mistaken, I was in Paris, Thailand, and Bali for like a good eight
mm.
weeks. So
Wow.
at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, it's kind of a chunk of time is when I tend to get into my reflective space. And that's when I disconnect from everything and I go and I travel.
Mhm.
And then I'm also going to be traveling again. I love to travel, but I think that's
Yeah.
also what I consider space in the creative world that I work
Good.
in.
Yes, yes. This has definitely led you to this moment and the creative chapter for you. And how has your writing process evolved over the years? When you create music now, what do you listen to first? Your thoughts, your emotions, or the sound?
Oof, it's all over the place. Because again, I don't get to choose what I
Yeah,
download, right? I don't get to choose what I ultimately hear. I mean,
yeah.
there's two sides to my job.
Yeah.
There's the side of it which is creating from a place of knowing what they want or expect, the client, right? And then there's the other side of creating for just desire and passion and wonder, right? So that's the fun part. This is why Sweet Tangerines is so exciting to me because those two worlds are blending. But I would say it's always different. And a lot of the times, unless it's like the business side of things, in terms of brief writing, I tend to lean into what I'm feeling in that moment. I will say it does help either having my guitar and strumming some chords or having someone that's playing piano around me that's like playing chords or changes or getting it, a bunch of tracks from a producer or whatever. Like I tend to riff off of that as well. So it's hard to say what comes through first, to be honest, but I do read a lot. And sometimes I'll jot down really cool concepts or I'll look into a word that really seems interesting and then I'll go into this like I read a lot. That's a lot. I
Mhm,
do that as well. I don't just,
mhm,
wait for messages to come through, but I would say it just depends on where I am and what I need to create in that moment and whatever gets prompted. But I will say the flow state is my favorite state of being when I am in the midst of creating. And I always tell the engineer, like, you got to always record because if you
mhm.
ask me to do something again, I can't because it didn't come totally from me, if that makes sense. So it
Yes,
just depends. Yeah, it just depends.
it makes so much sense. And I think writing some of the episodes you see today come from a space where I have to feel it.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
really
I remember
do.
one time I was writing for this camp, this project for an
Yeah,
Appalachian
yeah.
type of TV show. And I think was it Westworld? Yeah, it's very Appalachian, like very cowboy country, like back in the, 20s and prior to that, 1800s. I have to literally sometimes go into the body of the character and write from that space.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
also requires a bit of like
yes, yes,
intentional movement in my heart space. Like, for
yeah,
example, there's this one song that we wrote. They wanted like a hymn, these like old church hymns of like
yeah,
blues. This is like slave days, like this is nothing light. And, they wanted me to channel this man who was the first black sheriff in town. And he had faced so many adversities, but managed to survive all of them, including like ricocheting bullets. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So,
yeah.
having to go into this man's sort of psyche and writing from that place, that also requires a different type of, entry point. And I think, again, like I said, it depends. I tend to write based on what is needed. And even
Mhm.
when I'm sitting in that character and I'm feeling it, I get the downloads and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
please forgive
yeah,
me. Like maybe there's like, there was some sin or something like that. Maybe he had, murdered some people because they were the fugitives, or, you know what I mean? There's always going to be so
mhm,
many complexities within a person's emotions and experience
mhm.
that I feel like being able to sit with these different characters also helps me enhance my ability to kind of like receive and channel those things. So, does that
Yeah.
answer the question? I'm not even quite sure.
It does. It makes so much sense. It answers perfectly because I think prior to this recording, I've been listening to Low Down on repeat
Oh wow. Wow,
because
that
that's
one's
how
that
I
one's a deep
feel.
one. Yeah.
I'm feeling that right now. I'm feeling this is what I'm going through. Another song that you sang with someone called Burnout.
Oh yes, with
Um,
Julian. Yes, my
yes,
German artist that I work with.
yes.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
experiencing a heavy burnout.
Yeah, that's what yeah. When
Yeah,
we came in that day, it was
yeah.
his first session. And can you imagine? It was his
Right.
first session with me in LA. And funny enough, after that session, he locked me in as the songwriter, as one of the songwriters for his album, because he's like, we need to keep writing. And so we still
Mhm.
write till this day. And oddly enough, that day, he was telling me, I know I should be showing up inspired and I should be showing up with all this
Mhm.
energy. I'm so sorry. And I said, how about
Mhm.
this? Why don't we just make some tea and you just
Mhm.
tell me what you're feeling, like what's going on? And he's talking about his dad and like his where he's at in his life and what he wants to do in his next chapter. And he just did, he just won the Voice Germany or something. I can't remember the exact story,
Yeah,
but we just sat
yeah,
there and
yeah,
in conversation learned about how I was like, you just sound really tired. You sound burnt out. Like
yeah.
maybe you just need a good vacation and maybe just go quiet for a little bit. Like whatever you need to nurture that silence and that time with yourself. It
Mm.
sounds to me like you're kind of there.
Yes,
And he was like,
yes.
oh my God, totally, whatever. And then how funny is it that we ended up writing that song about exactly what he was feeling in that moment, which was very burnt
Mm.
out.
Beautiful. It's a really beautiful song, Low Down, Burnout. I was listening on repeat prior to this recording, and I'm
Mm,
glad how destiny brought us together today and
yeah, it
gave
sounds
us
like
this
it.
conversation. You spoke a lot about noise and overstimulation in this conversation. What does
Yes.
making music look like and feel
Yeah,
like
because you're
for
making
you
noise.
today? Yeah, and how has the way
Gosh.
you write, compose, or even listen changed you or who you are as a person?
Wow. Wow, wow, that has layers. So if say I like something, right? Say if I
Mhm.
like a certain song or a certain band or a group, or like for example, I'm obsessed with Jungle since like last year. I love them. I tend to be sort of drawn towards what I'm like drawn towards, and then if I can create a project around that, I do it. Does that make sense? So like
Mhm.
I tend to
Yeah.
again move very intuitively towards what I'm doing, even with the artists that I work with. Um,
Mhm.
we don't sit there and like, okay, we're going to write a smash. We don't sit there and try to conjure up a hit, right? We just sit there, we go in, we channel, and then we pick the best parts, right? And
Mhm.
so I would say changes in terms of how I used to work back then and how I work now is, again, way more intuitively. Because I
Mhm.
think back then it was more, okay, here's the structure, we're looking at patterns, we're looking at, okay, most times musicians look at this, but I've always moved very much with my heart. I speak exactly how I feel. I don't really filter myself, which can sometimes not be a great thing. I'm much better at that now, but I'm just very honest. When someone asks a question, I make sure I give them I preface it. Are you ready for this? Are you sure you want to hear the full truth? Because I feel like I do myself and others a disservice when I'm not honest and when I don't allow the truth or the flow or whatever it is that's coming through to really take its
mm,
position or shape.
mm.
So I don't know. I don't know how to really answer that because again, it's in the micro moments, and I feel like yeah, I'm more to answer your question again. It's more intuitive now.
Sure you're excited about working on Sweet Tangerine that's coming out, hopefully soon. And then you are making these spaces, while you're making these spaces for you to, be in this creative journey, whether in music or in life, or just who you are becoming. What's something you've learned about yourself in the in between seasons when you're not
Mm.
creating, performing, or actively producing?
This kind of goes back to your previous question when you asked me about the hyperstimulation and all the noise that's out there and like how do you find the space to create the sound, right?
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to that because the most valuable thing that I've learned in all of this is how I'm now able to see how stimulants, like
Mm,
TV, films, music, social media, radio, whatever, right? Any kind of stimulant out there, how much power it can have over me, over a person when I overexpose myself. Meaning, I'm going to ground this for a second. The best lesson I've learned in my life with all that's happening, that has happened, is that I make sure that I pay attention
mhm,
to the things that enter my eyes,
mhm,
my ears, even my
mhm,
nose, and what comes out of my mouth.
mhm,
Meaning, you know how people get obsessed with reality shows? I don't get sucked into that space. I don't really watch a lot of TV. I don't really
mhm,
have a TV show that I come home and watch. I don't really have that. I watch films because I'm looking for an arc or a story or it's well made or maybe it won some awards and I want to find out why.
mhm,
I'm very careful of what I allow into my
mhm,
senses and
mhm.
out of my senses. I've gotten a lot better at filtering out noise and
Mhm.
filtering out things that essentially stimulate cortisol in the body. And
Yeah.
just as a little bit of science moment, right? So our brains release
Mhm.
so many chemicals throughout the day. And one of the chemicals that is considered toxic or poisonous is a chemical that gets released when we're stressed. And that's called cortisol, right? We know about
Mhm.
cortisol fatigue
Mhm.
or inflammation. Cortisol is essentially a poison that it's a chemical that we naturally have in our bodies, but only gets triggered when we are exposing ourselves to things that trigger the cortisol. So anything that triggers stress, like you could maybe some people are, drawn to horror films and they feel so excited around horror films, but what they're actually not realizing is they're overstimulating their cortisol glands and
Mhm.
causing a lot of anxiety to fill the body without realizing that it's what they're exposing themselves to, which is causing the anxiety. That's why we have such an anxious society these days.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
best
Mhm.
thing I say that I've learned throughout the years is to be careful of what I allow through my eyes, my ears, my nose, and what comes out of my mouth. Even what I say to myself. So I'm very protective with these things because of how overstimulated we are. Again, like even social media, I usually take 1 week off where I don't even have the app on my phone. I don't even open it. I don't like literally I'm 1 week, I'm completely off the radar. And then the
Mhm.
rest of the 3 weeks I'm on it because I have to be social for work or for postings or to share certain things or to make sure, hey guys, I'm alive, I'm working, or hey, I'm with my family for family
Mhm.
stuff. So it's one of those things where I've become more conscious of scheduling the media that I expose myself to or to schedule the things that I watch or listen to or to consume. Because even podcasts are also
Yeah.
a mode of consumption like we're doing right now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
again, like I think you finding that courage and that bravery to put out information that essentially can help people and actually fuel them and feed their souls is a beautiful step in the right direction, no matter what we're doing, right? So I
Mhm.
think that there's something to be said about that, that you feel so moved towards putting out information that actually nourishes souls and heals, minds and bodies and spirits, and I think being able to see life move through us and with us in its energetic dynamics is what's
Wow.
helped me kind of arrive at this place where I'm like, okay, Shay, be careful what you hear, be careful what you see, be careful what you touch, be careful what you smell, be careful, not that
Yeah.
I'm saying go through this world being all cautious. No,
Yeah.
protect
No.
your peace is what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
our bubble and our field of energetics and our senses, this is such a beautiful, powerful space that we own. And that's why the space and the silence is so powerful.
Wow. And behind the scene of running the podcast, my God, I don't know how much it has triggered my cortisols.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still have my stress, but hey, it's
Yeah.
real. This is
It's
very
real. It's
real,
real.
which is why, like, this goes into like regulation as well. Like, I've gotten very good
Yeah.
at regulating my
Oh,
body and resetting my
thanks for
vagus
telling
nerve.
me.
And
Yeah. It just
yeah,
makes,
yeah,
yeah, it makes so much sense when I need that break. I need that space to just
yeah.
maybe let my cortisol rest.
Yes, yes. To
Yeah.
let it
Yeah.
plateau. And I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many ways to do this. There's breathing techniques,
Yeah.
there's
Mm.
resetting your vagus nerves. You can also listen to frequencies, sound healing, which I'm sure Jamie can fill you in on. Like, literally, we are all literal vibrational, energetic beings. So,
Yeah.
whatever energetics we expose ourselves to, we're taking it on.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why I value and I appreciate and I make so much space in my world because I'm able to regulate, because I'm able to hear things and to get the downloads and the wisdom that, our guides or angels or spirits, or I don't know, like really, or God, feel so close to source because I make the space. And
Mhm.
hopefully, like maybe in this time and space, you're like, wait a minute, I run around doing all these things, whatever, but have I scheduled solo time for Reefy yet?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
got to do it. So it's just
Mhm.
kind of a checkpoint that I think that's why I love talking about this because I'm not
Mhm.
saying my whole life is a quiet bubble. No,
No.
that's so
Yeah.
unrealistic. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, I think there's so much power in space and silence that many of us don't find ourselves tapping into. And I think once we start doing that more actively and consistently, we're going to start learning so much more about ourselves and finding the power that we can sustain ourselves to continue to propel forward. So,
Beautifully, beautifully said, Shayna. Beautifully
source,
said.
source, source is the energy.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Now,
Mhm.
before we end the conversation, what are your hopes and dreams, both for yourself and for the music you want to leave behind? What would feel most true, most fulfilling to you now?
Oh, this is going to sound so cheesy, Rufi.
You go, Shay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Hit it.
I want to be an advocate and a proponent in creating works of art, especially through music, that will heal people by releasing all these beautiful oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, all these beautiful happy chemicals into our bodies, by releasing those chemicals into people's energetic
Yes.
beings. And so my whole mission in life now is to make sure that I'm creating music that literally makes people feel good. I mean, we go into the dark spaces as well, like you said, the low down, the burnt outs. We need the negative spaces to see the light. We need the height to see the lows. We need all the polarities of life to see the beauty in life itself, right? But if I could leave this world with music that has literally healed people or gave people a reason to celebrate or connect or go on a road trip by themselves and listen to music that makes them feel expansive,
Mhm.
I will say that I have left this planet in a better place.
Mhm.
The way I found it. I'm not saying, like a huge, crazy, with all that's going on in the world always, but in my small little lifetime, I would like to know that I left the world, in a more healed place,
Yes, and you
at
did,
least to my
Shayna.
listeners or
You did
whoever.
at
Yeah. Oh,
least for
thank
me.
you.
For me, I think your music,
Oh.
I was first introduced to Take Your Time. Take Your Time was the music
Hmm.
for me to heal in that, heartbreaks. And then, It's You when I found
Yeah.
someone and it didn't happen. And then now Low Down and
Mhm.
Burnout, among other musics you
Yeah.
have, you speak
It sounds
to
like you
me,
tapped into
yeah,
the
through your
depths.
music.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I
Mm.
don't just cry. I don't just sing with it. I lift it, Shayna,
Beautiful.
and you're already doing it. And I think your legacy behind, I may speak for other people who did not tell you this, but that's it. You've done it all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And
That is
what's
very
coming?
sweet. Thank
Sweet
you. Wow.
Tangerine coming in this
Mhm.
conversation. You are an inspiration to me, Shayna. Thank you for honoring this space, making this space, giving me the exclusive to share your story. And I hope one
Mhm.
day you will be who you aspire to be, and be successful in what you do. And then hope we meet again.
Thank you. And it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today. It's funny, I never thought I'd actually be talking about these things, but
Yeah.
because you picked such a specific, we, I should say, collectively picked such an
Mm,
important topic to me right now that's been really resonating. I'm happy
mhm.
that we got to really dive in, and thank you for sharing your pieces of your life too. I really appreciate it. I know what that's like to, to trust someone and and it's an honor to hold space for you as well. And thank you. And as far as I'm concerned, like we're already successful. We're doing it. We're living it.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
healthy. There's so much to be grateful for. So, and that being said, thank you so much for making time for me and for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm so happy we got to share these times together. And if there's anything I can do to
Mhm.
help you continue your journey, I'm here for you.
Yes, thank you, Shayna. And this season finale episode, I'm honored to feature you in this my final moments. And I'm so
Oh,
proud. I really am. I really
for
am
now,
proud
for now,
right now.
for now.
Yes. And Sarah,
Yes.
I thought of you too. I'm,
Yes, yes, I'm sure. I
so
mean, think
yeah.
about Speak Up for a moment. I was like, oh, maybe this is where
Mm.
it all started.
Itulah dia.
Because,
Itulah
like,
dia.
it all
I was
started when I was 15. I started speaking up about things that were important to me. And now look at me, how many years later, I'm still advocating for that. And I think us as
Mm,
human beings that are, again, overstimulated and hyper,
mm,
just
mm,
thrown
mm,
things at, I think there's something that we can do in
mm,
community and with each other and empowering the source of our energy, not what's outside of us. I think there's just such a beautiful thing that happens as we age and as we grow wiser. We start realizing, wait a minute, the power is actually not outside of me, it's inside of me. Oh my
mm.
God. And then when
Yeah.
we discover that,
Yeah.
we start really feeding and fueling that power. And I think that to me is it reflects in your vitality and your health and truly in this day and age, truly literally health
Mm.
is wealth.
Well, indeed.
And I think, you spending your time making sure to advocate for mental illness and all these wonderful, very personal types of
Hmm.
topics and subjects. I think it's a beautiful thing you're doing. I really hope this is just a pause for you
Yeah.
in your journey as well. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shayna. Thank you for listening to He. A new episode is available every Thursday, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear from you. Follow me on social media at Rafi Ridzwan and at He Podcast for all the updates and behind the scenes. Once again, thank you for listening to He with Rafi Ridzwan.